Welcome back to the program. This is Kivumbi 2017 right here on KTN News. I'm still with our panel here of Nelson Harvey, Ken Mbani, as well as Oliver Mutahi. Now, before we took a break, Oliver, we're looking at some of the responses by Chebukati and IEBC as far as the defense is concerned. And they've already clearly indicated that the statistics on IEBC portal are not final results. They're also saying the presidential election results are based on Form 34B. So someone might ask, why did they even have those results in the first place on their portal, bearing in mind that elections are a very emotive matter in this country?
Yusuf, I think it is imperative for us to begin at your last point. Elections are very emotive in this country, and the need to have transparency as far as tallying and relaying of results is concerned. Because one, if look at the danger that the IBC would have worked in if those results were not displayed in the portals. And you know Kenya is a country whereby narratives and counter-narratives are thrown, and it's a country where propaganda rules the day. And if that portal was not there, what would have happened is that politicians and all the agents of mayhem and what have you would have used that opportunity to propagate each and everything that we thought were results. Another point which we need to emphasize.
But there also will argue that this same portal is the one which has brought this argument in place in the first place, because of the discrepancies.
What we need to emphasize is that the results that will be used are the results, the Form 34A from the polling station sent to the constituency tallying center and to the national tallying center are the ones that will form the basis of the results that will be used, or that will be used and that was used to declare the president. Another point which we need to remind Kenyans is that before we went to the elections, we had a Court of Appeal ruling which stated categorically how the elections were to be handled. These elections were not electronic. The only thing that was electronic was voter identification for biometrics and the transmission of the results.
And that's where so many people have issues with.
But the other part was to be done manually, from voting, tallying, to even the announcement of who is the president and who is the member of parliament and all other positions was to be done manually. And that is why we are putting so much premium on the technology, and we end up trying to taint the credibility of the election based on technology. The credibility of this election cannot be taken away merely on the basis of the technology. Let us look at other factors,
including the results on the portal. Before I come to you, Mbani Harvey, I'm sure you'll differ with that. In the first place, if IEBC were not very sure about the figures they had on their portal, the question is, why make it public in the first place?
The best way to answer your question, Yusuf, is to interrogate what really is Raila Odinga's complaint in respect of that issue. Raila Odinga says this, that first, what IBC did was not in accordance with what the Constitution and the Court of Appeal had decreed. And two, what the IBC did was intentional to create a public perception that his opponent, President Uhuru Kenyatta, was leading by a margin of 11% right from the beginning of the stream up to the time of the declaration. Now, if you were to look at what Oscar says, it betrays the defense taken by the IBC, because at the final end of that transmission, there was no difference between what was being projected on the screen and what the IBC used to declare President Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of this election. So it cannot lie in the mouth of the IBC to say those were statistics, these were not results. And if you look at it from that point alone, and on the basis of the direction given in the case of Joho versus Nyange, the process through which these results were to be transmitted was breached. And that alone, in my humble view, as a lawyer who has handled serious election petitions in this Kenya, is sufficient to annul this election.
Mbani.
Just to build on what these great legal minds are saying, if you look at the court's ruling in 2013, one would really see that the judgment that Mutunga and co gave the country gifted IBC with a milk-fed turkey for future fraudsters. Why do I say so? One, if you look at the narrative the way it has been woven, you are already seeing IBC had started poking holes in what NASA took to court, and it insisted that this matter must be finalized at the constituency level. And the primary source of what gives this election credence is the Form 34A. Because in the absence of Form 34A, you can't have...
These are results from the polling stations, right?
Polling stations. In the absence of that, you cannot arrive at Form 34B. Yeah? So when IBC focuses their argument on Form 34B, you already see that something could have happened in between to arrive at their Form 34Bs, because they have been questioned in the past. And to give credence to what I am saying, one of the late admissions of Ezra Chiloba was that they had not submitted all the Form 34As at one time, and this was admitted in public space. So already you can begin seeing that insofar as NASA took this matter to court, they had already seen and they had drawn lessons from the 2013 management of the case they took to court. And that is why probably one would want to explain why weren't they willing to take this matter back to court. They only made a second decision to bring up this matter in court when they said some of the non-governmental organizations that they thought were going to pursue this matter in court had been attacked by the instruments of the state. And this is very well in the public domain.
Yes. Yeah. I think Ambani basically, what Ambani says that, you know, as much as, you know, Form 34B is seen as very important, then the same should be talked about 34A.
Yusuf, I think there is one notion which we need to correct here. One, elections, as the political analysts have said, are won merely on the votes cast. And merely, you never win elections without by casting aspersions here and there. What this election was won on the basis of Form 34A. Another thing which I tend to disagree with how NASA has handled the whole thing. Let NASA tell the world and the public at large that our tallying, we tallied these were the results. Our Form 34As in their numbers are clearly the difference between the Form 34As from NASA tallying center and the ones that IBC provided. There is a difference. That is the only way we will be able to go now to the facts and the evidence of this case. But now dealing with the case on technicality, that it did not follow the Joho or the Court of Appeal ruling to the latter. But what we need to know is that it followed it in spirit. And that is why we had the architecture of transmission of results the way it was. So by just saying that there were some parts of the ruling was not followed, I think it's not in order.
Okay, before I come to you, Ambani, I'm sure you'll react to that shortly. Let's take a look at some of the responses by both President Uhuru Kenyatta as well as IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati and the Commission itself. And this is part of their defense. But before that, let me just start with President Uhuru Kenyatta's response to the petition by NASA. And this is what he had to say. We're going to get it shortly on our screen there. He did say that I campaigned in every part of Kenya. Our strategy succeeded. DP, referring to the Deputy President, and I are not computer-generated leaders, I believe. He was reacting to the statement there by the NASA leader, Raila Odinga. And he did indicate, I did not use civil servants and public servants in campaign. He also added, I did not abuse office or corruptly influence voters. It's up to the NASA's legal team to water down that in any way they can. And let's cross over to IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati and the commissions itself. This is part of the defense, and they're saying election was conducted in an impartial, efficient, accountable manner. Presidential election results based on Form 34B, something that we have been talking about now. They also indicated that statistics on IEBC portal are not results. I believe they meant they're not final results. Let me not hold brief for them. And then they added integrity of Forms 34A and 34B uncompromised. And they're saying there are no ungazetted polling stations. Irregularities can't alter final result. That is part of the defense by both the IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati, as well as the commission itself. From there, Harvey, I think the nurses' legal team have their work cut out for them. They have to prove all these things as wrong.
Not necessarily, because, look, the Supreme Court is an apex court. It doesn't have the luxury enjoyed by the High Court of 6 months in determining an election petition. They only have 14 days. And
actually, we have a few days than that now.
Yeah, actually now we're remaining with 7. So ideally what the court ought to do, and what the court, in my honest opinion, will be looking at, is not the volume of that evidence, but to interrogate the principle. And if you can isolate the principle from the evidence, and if you look at the evidence just on a scintilla, without much interrogation, you're able to see how the case will progress. Now, look at the statement that has been put forth by President Uhuru Kenyatta in his response. He has said the function of government did not stop during the campaign period. So to that extent, I was entitled to continue launching and the continuation of my projects. Now, therein lies the mischief, because about 5 centuries before, when confronted with a similar issue, the French Emperor Louis XVI responded that I am the state, and you can't differentiate between me and the state. But the election law is quite clear. There is that intervening period within which the parties are supposed to campaign. Now, if it is admitted that these things were done within that period, then the issue moves forward to a legal question. Because in my view, it's not one that is confounded with a lot of doubt. The facts on that particular point are clear. Yes. So the question will be, is there a difference between the president in office and the president as a candidate for that election? Now, that will be an issue for Raila's team to argue. That will be an issue for President Uhuru's team to argue. Then you go to the other one on the part of the IEBC about the fact that even if there were irregularities, they did not affect the final tally. Now, look at the margin between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. It's a big margin by any means, 1.4. So that if Raila is to convince the court that, look, this difference is not proper, it's not regular, he has an uphill task. You understand? But as we have indicated before, it's not an issue of really what the numbers are. But let's go forward a bit. How did this margin of 1.4 emanate in the first place? It emanated because of that perception that was projected on the portal and on the stream.
The same portal that IBC says are not final results.
Exactly. Now, IBC now takes a tangent that says, look, put that aside. The case is this. The finality of the results is as contained in Form 34B. That may well be so. But how did we generate Form 34B? The argument by Raila has been, and which appears to have a lot of public and evidence that we in law call is in the matter of public notoriety, is this. There's credible evidence in that assumption that Form 34B was created after the fact. You understand? And therein lies the biggest problem that IBC has to confound. And look at it at this point, Yusuf. Even you, the media, have a big responsibility on this issue. All your journalists went to the 290 constituencies. We never saw them transmit what was being declared by the returning officer. They were looking back towards what is in the portal or what was being announced by IBC at Bomas.
I think everyone took whatever it was on the portal as the gospel truth in the first incident.
Yeah.
And it's the same portal that IBC now says, are not the final results. Do you think, Mutai, IBC is trying to say in a polite way that the figures that were in the portal are not that correct?
Yusuf, if anybody is watching and was here when we began the whole process, he or she should believe it to the fact that the IBC chairman on the first date, he said the results on the portal were not the final results. And that is that. He said it and it was clear that they were not the final results, but they were provisional results, although we do not have the place of provisional results in law. But what I will want
But queries will be raised if the figures are don't tally well with those on the
queries
forms.
will be raised, yes, but the main reason why we have tallying of results, both at the constituency level and at the national level, is to heal those queries. If we didn't have the two-tier of tallying of results, we will now go back to the portal result will be final. But now that we have both tallying at the constituency center and the national center, this is to make sure that they harmonize the numbers. The numbers are from 34A and 34B
as you finish,
must talk to each other. From 34As, if we have a constituency with 80 polling stations or 100, the figures, the total from the Form 34As will give us the Form 34B. And that is what we have. And in case we have the minor errors, as we are seeing in the portal, I disagree with my senior Harvey that those will annul the results. Last election, we had a petition in 2013. Yes. The opposition then called could not prove that the 8,000 votes which the president had passed the 50+1 mark.
I think now they have a even bigger task.
Now the NASA lawyers have a bigger task.
Hold on to that, and I'm sure Harvey will react to that. But for now, let's cross over to where I believe the NCAC chairman Francis Ole Kaparo is at this moment addressing the media. Let's listen into what he has to say.
Rising. And we notice that in a lot of counties that process has taken place smoothly. But in a number of counties, there are disturbing reports of almost total victimization of staff by incoming governors. There are several cadres in the county government. There are those that are appointed by the governor, generally the county executive committee members, and naturally you would expect those to be serving at the pleasure and during the duration of the incumbent governor. And that's what the law says, and that this is to hold office upon the resumption of office by a new governor. That we have no problem if they are offloaded, because you expect that to happen. There are also the civil service cadre that are more or less political in their appointments. The principal secretaries and the principal officers, the chief officers, who are again were brought in to serve a particular purpose under a particular governor, and those two could be persons who could leave office. But the general civil servants appointed by the county public service board ought to be left intact, and we shouldn't criminalize them because they were appointed at a particular time when a particular governor was holding office. And that would apply also to the national government. So we want public servants to be respected and their tenure to be assured. But we also have a rider for future conduct of public servants, which is that once you are a public servant, you must be impartial. you must not actively involve yourself in partisan politics, because then you bring your office to disrepute. So public officers should be left to do their businesses the best way they can, but they must also desist from taking political sides. That is the only way we can ever achieve a steady, impartial, effective public service. So we must keep them out of politics. They must also desist from actively taking sides in the political contests. The second issue that concerns the Commission as new governors take over is the requirement by the County Act, the County Government Act, the County Government Act, Section 65, requires that any new appointments by county governments must comply with Section 65 of the County Government Act, which requires that the dominant community must not take more than 70% of the positions available, and the minorities should be granted 30% of the available positions. Last time we did Senate audit, most counties failed in this score, and we wanted them to be mindful of the provisions of that law. The fourth issue we would like to address today is the issue of nominations to the National Parliament and to the county assemblies. And we urge all political parties who have the right to nominate persons to the various positions both in the national and county assemblies to take into account the constitutional requirements which demand that those of our society, the minorities, who cannot get into the national discourse because they don't have the numbers to elect them, should be considered for nominations. That's one group that must be considered, the minorities. There are also those who are disabled, and they too deserve to be considered and brought on board. There are also, of course, the issue of the women. The issue of the women, particularly in our National Assembly, because in the county assemblies, the Constitution has already demanded that they cannot function without 1/3 of the women. But since we are unable at the national level to reach the threshold of 1/3 so far, the available positions for nomination in the National Assembly and in the Senate should be given to the minorities, to women, and youth, and other groups that are disadvantaged. This is one way of healing the wounds that may have been created during our electioneering period, and also a way of bringing the disadvantaged to the playing field, to the table, so that they too feel they are participating in the affairs of their country. We would also would like to ask the governors, because they are employers, the county public service boards, and the county assemblies service boards, to use the opportunities available as a way of healing the nation. Those who are aggrieved, those who lost, those communities that could not make it should be given opportunities to serve in the various positions that will be available both at the county and at the national level. And we also wanted to request the national government, when finally the president is decided who it will be, to use the same criteria to make sure that you reach out to the various communities across our land, so that no community, no people, is left out of the management of our affairs, so that we feel included. That is the spirit and the letter of our constitution. Finally, we also ask Kenyans, in the same way that you have gone about your business pending the outcome of the petition, the presidential petition that has been taken to Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court finally makes the decision, we must all obey the decision of the court and go about our businesses as usual. That is what we would like to say for today, and we will be communicating to you in due course as matters develop. But so far we are very happy that the Kenyan people have gone about their businesses, that they are peaceful, that the areas which had problems have cooled down, and business is back to normal. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Well, there you go. That is the NCAC Chairman Francis Ole Kaparo there issuing a statement with regards to the change of, leadership as far as the county leadership is concerned. He talked about the need to have an all-inclusive government in the county government, as well as, the need to cater for the smaller tribes in the counties. And above all, he called on the appointment that are currently happening in all the 47 counties to be lawful. And here in our studio, I think we need to wrap up our show now. And let me just start from Mutai. Your final comments as far as, the change of guard in the county is concerned. We've seen some governors coming in, issuing, memos left, right, and center. There are those workers who still have their contracts intact, but they've been suspended anyway.
My point of departure will be to, first of all, thank the residents of all the 47 counties for at least showing the depth of democracy in this country by sending home at least 20 governors. It means that we are making sure that the sovereign power in this country lies with the voter. But what has taken me aback is what the new governors are doing. We understand that with power comes some warmth of arrogance and disregard of procedure, but they should be told that there is law, and the staff and all these manner of changes they are trying to do should be done in accordance with the law. We do understand that they are from voting, they are from the campaign period, and they gave the voters a lot of promises. They should not be overwhelmed by the urge of implementing the campaign promises. It should be done in accordance with the law. When you look at the staff of the county staff, we have staff in county they are divided into two. There are staff that were hired by the county public service board, and then we have the staffs, a number of staff which have contracts, and these contracts are made in a way that they are tailored to the electioneering period. And those are the staff like the chief of staffs, chief officers, and the CECs. Those ones we have seen in most of the media, their positions have been advertised. Yes. But it goes against the labor laws to get into office, fire people, sack, and do whatever is there.
So in other words, you're saying that's not the way to go
That's
about
not
it.
the way. They will attract a lot of litigation, and the money they are trying to save will be used up in litigating in courts.
Yes.
And it's also beginning a country in a bad footing, whereby you put in a sense of despair and a sense of lack of, there is no continuity, whereby if a new governor comes in today, we have new people. I think our democracy should outgrow that, and our democracy should not be subjective rather than objective.
Exactly. Harvey.
Now, he whosoever takes an appointment, in particular a political appointment in a county, must understand that the life of a county government is 5 years. If it's a professional appointment based on a contract, there should be no problem. But if you are hired on the basis of the political affiliations of the governor, then you have to be fired. It happens like that all over the world. You can't force an incoming governor to take individuals who hold administrative and political office in the previous regime to work with him. But there is quite elaborate law, as my colleague has indicated, on how to determine that issue.
Yes.
But the only differentiation is as I've set out. If it's a professional appointment based on your competence as a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer, then you are an employee of the county government. But if it's a political appointment or an administrative appointment, like a chief of staff or a minister, then there is no way you can hang
Your
on to
tenure
power.
ends with the
You
other
have to go.
government.
Yes.
Ambani, your final comment on that. Actually, in some cases, we've seen some governors even going ahead and suspending the county service board itself. I thought they're supposed to be independent.
I think my final take on that is that one of the most important things is that the public service board can also be reconstituted with the change of regime, and it will be very much in order, because the previous public service board served at the behest of the governor or the outgoing governor. So this is just a normal transition process, and to finalize, I would like also to make a comment on the previous matter that we were discussing.
Briefly.
The judiciary has now been given a second chance to have a bite at the cherry. Whatever was done by the Mutunga team can be corrected in terms of jurisprudence and moving forward this country. I think this NASA case will be a case that will actually change the thinking and the perception of Kenyans if we are to truly build a united country. But as we stand at the moment, we are really in a divided country, and that is why you can see discussions of secession popping up.
I think there's need to accept the outcome from the Supreme Court ruling that we do expect by Friday next week at a time like this, hopefully. And let me just end with a statement here, a part of the statement by the NCAC chairman, Francis Olekaparo, who said, let's all be ready to accept the decision of the Supreme Court and continue with our business. Many thanks, Ken Mbani, for your input. Nelson Harvey, as usual, many thanks. It's always good to have you. And then we have Oliver Mutai, who's also a lawyer. Many thanks, all of you, for joining us here on Kivumbi 2017, right here on KTN News. And that brings us to the end of our program. But don't go too far. Kisa Ondera will come up next and bring you all the developing story in our next hour of Kivumbi 2017. Actually, it's our Swahili team who are going to come up next. And then right after that, Kisa Ondera is going to take over. Bye-bye for now.